All right, so section 4.10, solving quadratics by completing the square. Now, to complete the square, you have to do specific things, okay? Now, at first, the instructions just tell us to find what the number is that completes the square. And then eventually they'll say, okay, solve, okay? But this is what it's, let me write down what it is to complete the square. So, completing the square. So you're normally going to be given, I'm not sure why it says view attendance detail. Give me a second. So to complete the square, first off, you're going to start off with an equation that looks something like this. Ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, completing the square means that this trinomial that they give you cannot be factored normally. Okay, you can't use the x method for it. Okay, so how do you solve it? Well, you can always use that formula we used yesterday, right? X equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. That is a quadratic formula. You could always use that, or you can complete the square. Okay, most people choose the formula. Okay, but sometimes it's better just to complete the square. So what do? First off, the very first step you want to do is you're going to get your b value divided by 2, and you're going to square it. Okay, whatever your b value is, you're going to divide it by 2, and you're going to square it. Okay, this becomes your new c value. The old c value, usually we shove it away. We throw it somewhere else and keep it away, but it's kind of hard to see here. It's best when we do an actual problem. So we will do that right now. Step 2, factor the new ax squared plus bx plus c into a perfect square. Okay, now what does a perfect square mean? You're supposed to use the x method to factor this thing. Now that you have a brand new c, you're going to be able to factor it perfectly. So you're supposed to use the x method, but you know what I'm going to do? Use the shortcut. I'm going to show you guys a shortcut, okay? That way you don't spend 2 to 3 minutes doing this. There's actually a nice little shortcut that you can use, okay? And then after that, you're done. So I guess you can say step 3, you're done. You only need to do more if you have to like continue to solve for other things, okay? But the main idea is you're going to get your b term divided by 2 and square it. Okay, that's gonna give us our new what we call c term. Okay, so we'll put that there, and then from there we can factor. And like I said, this just seems a little weird because you don't see it in action. But let me show you what it looks like. Okay, the first 4 problems that they give us are not solving problems. They're basically a fill in the blank, like what goes here. So what's the new c, as we called it? Okay, what goes there, and then they're going to say, okay, factor it. But they're not going to say solve. They just want you to find the c and factor it. Okay, so let me show you what I'm talking about. So let's take number 2, for instance. That way we can still kind of see the work here. So let me write down number 2 here. P squared plus 18p plus something. Now what they want me to do is figure out what goes in that underline, my brand new c. What goes in there? And then they're going to want me to factor. Okay? So let me kind of move this back this way. I'm going to put a little parenthesis here. Fill in the blank. Then factor. Okay, we're going to fill in the blank and then factor. So how do we fill in the blank? Well, we got to find the new c. How do we find the new c? Find b divided by 2 and then square it. What's my b term? 18. So I'm going to get 18 divided by 2, and then I'm going to square it. Well, 18 divided by 2, that's 9. What's 9 squared? 81. So guys, here's my fill in of the blank, 81. There's my answer for filling in the blank. Okay, 81. I mean, is that hard to do? It's not bad, right? It's not bad. For some reason, students hate it. I'm like, that's not that big a deal. The part they really, really hate is the next part, the factoring part, because they're like, oh, now I got to do the X method and all this other stuff. No, I'm going to show you a shortcut. Okay? So, how do we factor it? This is what you're going to do. You're going to take the letter that you're using, the first symbol that you see. So notice the P value, the plus, and I'm going to put it right here, P plus, okay? And then I'm going to leave a little space, and I'm going to write squared. This is why they call it a perfect square, because the factor is squared. So that's why they call it a perfect square. In that little space, okay, I just take the square root of C. So I'm going to give you a little hint right here. Take, the square root of C to fill in the missing piece. So what's my C value? 81, right? What's the square root of 81? 9. So there you go. I factored it. I don't need to do the X method. I could do the X method if I want to. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to show it to you guys really quick. I'm not even going to speak it out loud. Let me just show you. X method would look like this. That's what you would have to do without the shortcut that I'm showing. You'd have to go through all that process. But you don't need to, because just remember, take the first letter, the first symbol, so either plus or minus, you're going to use one of those, and then in the missing piece, you're just going to say, what's the square root of the new number that I found? So if it was 81, what's the square root of that? That's 9. Okay, so I'm going to put a 9 there. And that's it. So this is the answer that you're going to basically look for. So look right here. For number 2, we found that 81 was the piece that you put in, and P plus 9 squared was the factor. And there you go. That's what you put. Okay? So let's do question 4. Let me see if any of these are a little harder than others, but I don't think they're really that big a deal. So let's do question 4, okay? X squared minus 20x plus something. All right, so question number 4. No, minus 20x. And it's going to be the same instructions, okay? Fill in the blank. Factor. Okay, so fill in the blank first, then I want you to factor it. So remember, to find this brand new C, we use B divided by 2, then we square. Okay? So what's my B term? Negative 20. And then I'm going to divide it by 2. Okay? So negative 20 divided by 2 is negative 10. What's negative 10 squared? 100. So that's what goes up here, 100. Again, I hope you guys aren't looking at this and saying, man, that's hard to do, because it's not that bad. You're just dividing by 2, squaring. That's it. Divide by 2 and square. All right? So I got my 100. Then they say, all right, let's factor. So what's my first letter that I see? X. What's the first symbol? Minus. So I'm going to go ahead and put X minus. Then I'm going to write squared. What's the square root of my C value? So it's 10, right? The square root of 100 is 10, and I'm done. That's it. I always have a hard time understanding why people hate this so much. Because to me, I'm like, that's not that hard to do, right? And they're like, oh, but it's because we haven't solved yet. I'm like, but that's not that bad either, but we'll see, right? We'll see how it goes. The first four problems that you guys have on the homework, I know they scramble them up, but if they were to give them to you in order, they would be these types of problems, okay? Where all you're doing is filling in a blank. That's it. Okay, fill in a blank, factor, you're done. So again, the square root of 100, I'm just going to leave another note here for you guys. The square root of 100 was 10. That's why we put that 10 right there. Okay? And the 100 was the brand new C that we found. So, all right. So how does this get harder? They make you solve. Okay? So we'll do a couple of those, and then after that we'll be done. So let's do question number 6, since it's right here and it's visible. So question number 6 is n squared plus 6n minus 8 equals 0. Now, you notice how they give me, now for this I'm going to have to solve it, okay? So let me just put directions here. Solve. You notice how they give me a c already? There's a minus 8 there. I need to find a brand new c. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get that negative 8 and I'm going to throw it to the other side. I don't want to see it, okay? So plus 8 plus 8. So I get n squared plus 6n. And I'm supposed to get a brand new c, right? So look what I'm going to do. Plus something equals 8 plus something. Now, can anybody tell me why I put addition of two blanks on both sides? Yeah, right, there's that golden rule they told you many years ago. What you do to one side of the equation, you must do to the other side. So if I'm going to create a brand new c on the left side, then whatever that is, it has to be added to the other side as well. Okay, no matter what. So what I do to one side, I must do to the other. Now, what's my brand new c? 9? All right, so you got that by doing what? All right. So 6 divided by 2, that's my b divided by 2. That's 6 over 2, that's 3. And 3 squared is 9. So there it is. All right, so good. So far, so good. Let's factor the left side. Use that little shortcut, right? The first letter, n. The first symbol, plus. Okay, so let me write that down. N plus something squared. Okay, what goes in that little empty spot? Careful, but you're on the right track. A 3. The square root of 9 goes in there, right? Remember, whatever goes in the little part, look what I put right here. Square root of 100 is 10. And the previous one, take the square root of c to fill in the missing piece, right? So just as a reminder, you're looking at your brand new c, you take its square root, that's what's going to go in there. So a 3 goes in there. And on the right side, what do I put? Well, look carefully though. 17, right? It's going to be 17. Okay. Now they're going to say, okay, you've done everything you need to do. Solve. Get n by itself. You see how n is trapped inside of something squared? How do I get rid of a square power? Square root. So here we go. Let's take a square root of both sides. The only thing you guys got to remember about square roots is that there's always positive and negative answers. So you're going to put plus or minus the square root of 17. The square root and the square will cancel out. They're going to disappear. Okay? What's my last step to solve? All right, let's subtract 3 on both sides, and then we're done. So negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 17. This will be your answer to your problem. This is the part that a lot of people do not like. Okay? They don't mind finding the c value. They don't mind, factoring it. But then when it's like, oh, now you want me to solve this stuff? Like, how am I going to do that, right? The square root, I don't know why, it just freaks them out. It scares them. And I'm like, why is that scary? You're just going to literally write square root and plus or minus of it, right? Because you always have a positive or negative answer for a square root. I mean, you just have to put a square root and then just add or subtract a number at the end. But I don't know. Again, you talk to, if you know someone that's a student of mine in my calculus classes, ask them, do you like completing the square? Let's see what their reaction is. I'm pretty sure they're going to be like, oh, I hate it's the worst thing you can ever do. But I always say, like, I don't get it. I don't understand why it's so bad. Okay, yeah, it's a lot of steps, right? I told you guys there's a lot of process to it. You gotta move things over. You gotta find a brand new c by doing b over 2 squared, right? Once you do that, you gotta solve. But it's nothing super tricky. It's just some extra work. Okay. Let's do number 8, and then after that, you guys will just be responsible for all the odd ones since I've done all the even ones. Do you guys have any questions on the solving one? Because usually people are okay with the original ones, but the solving ones are a little bit more difficult sometimes. But any questions on this one? Question number 6. All right, if you do, after we're done, you can ask. All right, let's look at number 8. It's x squared plus 2x minus 13 equals to 5. Okay, right now I'll zoom into that. I just want to make sure I write it down. And again, we're just going to solve. And then after that, you guys have your time to do work or whatever it is you need to do. So, let me put... Now remember, our whole goal is to find a brand new c. Right now my c value is negative 13. I don't want to use that. So I got to get it out. Okay? So let's add 13 to both sides. Alright? So I have x squared plus 2x plus my brand new c, whatever that's going to be, is equal to, well, 5 plus 13, that's 18, plus my brand new c. Okay, so I did add 13 plus 5 to get 18. And then I had to leave a space for the brand new number I'm about to put in. Okay? What's my brand new number going to be? Anybody know? What's my brand new c? What number do I divide by 2? 2, right? My b value is right here. So I'm going to get 2 and divided by 2. Well, 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 1 squared is 1. So I'm just going to put 1 and 1. All right, on the left side, I'm going to factor it. So my letter that is being mentioned first is a letter x, and then a plus, right? So, whoops, let me put back that 2 there. So x plus parentheses squared. Now, what goes in that little empty area? Remember, it's the square root of the new c. So yeah, 1. The square root of 1 is 1, right? So I'm going to put 1. Okay, that's the square root of 1. On the right side, I put 18 plus 1, so that's 19. Okay, that's from right here. 19 comes from right there. Now all you got to do is solve. So you see how x is stuck inside of a square? So how do I get rid of a square? Square root, right? So square root x plus 1 is equal to plus or minus square root of 19, because square root of 19 doesn't have a nice number, right? If you were to have gotten like square root of 16, then make sure you simplify it to 4, because the square root of 16 is 4, right? So if you can simplify it, do it. But if you can't, just leave it alone. All right? And what's my last step here? What do I do to solve for x? All right, move the 1 to the other side. So we got x equals to -1 plus or minus the square root of 19, and I am done. Okay, that would be my answer. Just to check to make sure, I'm going to look at my solutions. Now remember how I told you they like to break them apart into a plus and a minus, right? So that's just all they're doing. They're breaking it apart into a plus and a minus. I didn't do that, and that's okay. But they like doing that. So, all right. Any questions on this one? All right. So then that means you guys have time to work on homework or whatever it is you need to work on. I'm going to stop the video.